All right, obviously this channel has covered a lot on Venezuela since probably 2016, 2017 when I started making videos. And for a while I was doing this series with a few Venezuelan people that I'd found who were willing to talk on the topic, called Testigo Venezuela, meaning Witness Venezuela. At a certain point, I think that despite my hope that Venezuela uh, leaves the orbit of international socialism, which it is. Anybody that claims that Venezuela isn't a component in a chain of international socialist movements doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Despite that, I think that my views have certainly crystallized with regards to intervention, and I'm against intervention. I don't want the U.S. to be involved in managing the affairs of other countries. And I never advocated for an armed intervention, and I've certainly avoided advocating for other means of manipulating other countries. I hope that the U.S. has a good relationship not only with Venezuela, but with most of our other neighbors in the Southern Hemisphere and Latin America in general. In fact, I think we need to work more on our relationships with those countries than with necessarily our relationships with the Middle East and Europe, because the Americas is really where we can forge the better relationships, because there is no ideological war between the United States and countries like Argentina or Brazil or Mexico or Ecuador. And this is a hemisphere that, thank God, hasn't had many wars, at least not in the last 50 years, between two different countries. But it could change. And the thing is that today, the proclaimed president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido, has called for a coup or a military uprising. People who are against it are calling it a coup, and people who are for it are calling it a popular and military uprising. But what really happened was that apparently a group of renegade soldiers pledged allegiance to his group of people. They freed the jailed opposition leader, Leopoldo Lopez, and they are currently trying to wrest control of the country away from Maduro and the PSUV, which is the leading party of the Venezuelan government, the current government that's ruling Venezuela. And if you haven't been in touch with what's going on, over the past 2.5 months, you've seen gradually most of the Western states, meaning Europe, with the exception, for example, of Italy, I believe, they have recognized Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela because of a clause in the Venezuelan constitution that allows the National Assembly to remove the president and declare the head of the National Assembly as the de facto president until a free election can be called and held. So here's a statement you should be able to see on screen, the English translation.
Pueblo de Venezuela, muy buenos días. Como ustedes saben, nuestra lucha ha estado siempre enmarcada en la Constitución, en la lucha no violenta, en trabajar por el prójimo, en salvar vidas, en trabajar por los más vulnerables, en atender a nuestras familias, en construir capacidades en el marco siempre de nuestra Constitución. En ese proceso dijimos, cuando el pueblo esté en las calles, asumiríamos las competencias. Cuando la comunidad internacional respaldara ampliamente nuestra lucha, estaríamos con el pueblo de Venezuela. En este momento, hacemos un gran llamado a los empleados públicos y a un componente fundamental, no solamente para la transición, sino para la reconstrucción de Venezuela, recuperar soberanía nacional, nuestras Fuerzas Armadas. Hoy, valientes soldados, valientes patriotas, valientes hombres apegados a la Constitución han acudido a nuestro llamado. Hemos acudido también al llamado. Nos hemos encontrado definitivamente en las calles de Venezuela. La Operación Libertad, los comités de ayuda y libertad, los invito inmediatamente a activarse. Los invito inmediatamente a cubrir las calles de Venezuela, el 1 de mayo empezó hoy. El cese definitivo de la usurpación empezó hoy. Contamos con el pueblo de Venezuela hoy. Las Fuerzas Armadas claramente están del lado del pueblo, están del lado de la Constitución, leales a la Constitución, leales al pueblo de Venezuela, a su familia, al futuro, al progreso. Han sido años de sacrificio, han sido años de persecución, han sido años incluso de miedo. Hoy se vence ese miedo. Hoy, como presidente encargado de Venezuela, legítimo comandante en jefe de las Fuerzas Armadas, convoco a todos los soldados, a todos y a todas, la familia militar, a acompañarnos en esta gesta, como siempre hemos hecho, en el marco de la Constitución, en el marco de la lucha no violenta que hemos hecho en todo momento. Así que el llamado es aquí, en este momento, en la base aérea La Carlota, a acompañar este proceso del cese definitivo de la usurpación que hemos convocado en todo momento, y lo dijimos con responsabilidad. Construcción de capacidades. Convocamos también a todos los que una vez incluso acompañaron lo que llamaron el proceso. Hoy es un encuentro de todos los venezolanos. Hoy todos los venezolanos queremos construir no solamente las capacidades, sino el futuro de nuestros hijos. Así que estén muy atentos a los llamados, a el llamado. Ya son muchos los militares que se suman, nuestra familia militar que de una vez dio el paso. A todos los que están escuchándonos, a todos los que nos van a escuchar en los próximos minutos, es el momento. El momento es ahora. El momento no solamente de la calma y la cordura, en este momento del coraje y la cordura, para que llegue la calma a Venezuela. Dios los bendiga, seguimos adelante, vamos a lograr la libertad y la democracia de Venezuela.
So that was already yesterday in the morning, and according to Maduro, he claims that the coup was defeated, but the fact is that there's no news that Guaido has been arrested, even though that is an open call for an uprising and basically a defiance of the Maduro authorities. You could say an illegal act if you believe in the Maduro government. Then he basically crossed the last line that there is to cross today or yesterday by calling on the military to participate in the removal of Maduro from office. But there's no sign yet that the coup has been definitively crushed. There was, of course, the video of Venezuela So there's this famous clip that happened to be broadcast all over the news, and this is from Global News in Canada. And it shows a military truck plowing through a group of people. Now, I didn't see anybody really injured, but that's kind of besides the point. So, yeah, there's these military vehicles that are going after these protesters who are out in the street. And yeah, are the protesters peaceful? I don't think you can call them necessarily peaceful. Yeah, this was censored by Global News. Yeah, you can see a person who's on the ground lying over there. You can see people coming and giving aid, and you can see other military vehicles that are, or these are actually the National Guard, the Bolivarian National Guard, KNB. So you see these people milling about, and there you see a Molotov cocktail being thrown at the back of one of these vehicles. But this is after somebody's already been plowed over, and that's kind of the point of what's going on here. You see a water cannon being deployed against people. So I've been seeing a lot of the left-wing, you can call them commentators, Tracy and what's that other guy's name? Aaron Matei and Greenwald and all those people. They're claiming that this is an illegal intervention, a coup, a deep state CIA operation. Now, okay, if you want to claim that, fine. You're still talking about police and National Guard going and running people over. Okay, these are people that if this was happening in the United States. For example, what happened in Ferguson, where there were people who were, yes, there were violent protests against police and against state troopers back in 2015. It was 2015 that it happened. They were calling that basically states racial suppression and everything. But this is happening in Venezuela. This is something that is consistently, it's happened over the years there, over and over again. And they claim that these aren't organic protests. They're really things that are orchestrated by the CIA and by our deep state. And I can tell you that the CIA and the deep state do a lot of horrible things. It still doesn't mean that Venezuela is a country run by competent and lawful people. And that's why I would say that, unfortunately, it is the behavior of people like Greenwald and Tracy and, there's Mike Weisbrot at the center. I forgot what his organization's called, but I think it's the Center for Economic Research Policy in Washington. So these are people who have, over the years, they've excused every single failure of the Maduro and Chavez governments. They've claimed that nothing catastrophic would ever happen. In 2014, I believe, or 2013, Weisbrot actually claimed that this idea that hyperinflation would happen in Venezuela was ridiculous. And, back in the day, he also claimed regarding our system that the idea that Social Security would collapse and would be unfunded was also absurd, and that with only minor adjustments it could sustain itself. So that being said, we can agree that intervention is wrong. We can agree that the U.S. should not be involved in other countries, and that Mike Pompeo's statements, including a statement he made apparently today that Maduro was going to flee to Cuba, and the only reason that he didn't was because Russia told him to stay. That is ridiculous. We can agree that the U.S.'s conduct over the past several months with respect to Venezuela has been a bad strategy, and that trying to orchestrate a constitutional removal of Maduro through Guaido has been a failure up till now. And the current stage of this uprising or coup or whatever you want to call it, I personally don't see evidence that it's succeeded. But if you're a person who's hoping for this coup to be put down, you have to realize that when coups are repressed and when when events like this fail, it doesn't mean that the system has worked and that it was triumph of good and everything. It means fundamentally that something that has yet to be resolved will have to be resolved down the road. So yes, at the moment I think Maduro will probably survive the coup, and I've waited on really commenting on this until now because it's a little unclear what's going down there. There have been rumors the entire day of what's going on, including that Lopez, who's been in prison for, I think, over a year now, that he'd fled to the Chilean embassy. I didn't find any source that could confirm that. And then there's people who are saying that, yes, the Venezuelan rebels are taking over military bases and stuff. People are putting text messages in English, by the way, from people who claim that they're on the ground down there and that they're taking over Maduro posts and turning them and liberating the country from communism. I don't think that it's going to happen yet, and I think that for those who are hoping for this beautiful revolution to happen, there's a lot of obstacles to it, and one of the main obstacles is that Maduro has very good friends that can help him to resist these sorts of pressures. He has the Cuban government. He has the Bolivarian National Security. I think it's called the Bolivarian Internal Security, SEBIN. So they have he has plenty of people that can help him to stay in power and put the fear of God into the people that are opposing him. Russia, Iran, China, they all have very strong presences in Venezuela. And unfortunately, they would have to be confronted perhaps in a military way in order for that to stop. So if you think that that's the correct course of action, are you going to get off your fat ass and try to help the people of Venezuela by going down there and fighting Maduro yourself? I highly doubt it. It's a very easy thing to ask other people to fight a war that you'll never have to be in. That's why a lot of people like me, even though we oppose communism and socialism, we are committed to non-interventionism as long as we can try to avoid war. Some wars, I believe, are unavoidable. I think that this war is avoidable. Other issues, yes, there's the Lima Group, which is the group of countries that is currently dealing with this. It's a smaller group within the Organization of American States. They're currently they could be working on a plan for a multinational intervention in Venezuela. That would be very, very strange. And if the U.S. is participating in that, I suspect a lot of people would be very disappointed in Donald Trump and angry at him and Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence and John Bolton for insinuating us into that conflict. And there's other countries that they stand to be affected. Jamaica is not that far from Venezuela. It says there. This is from the Jamaican Observer. It says that they're closely observing what's going on. Okay, there's plenty of people around the world that know, or in the region, I should say, that know that this is not a conflict that necessarily will end up going well for the people, not only of Venezuela, but the countries around it. It says Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, in an interview with the Jamaican Observer yesterday, said though there are widespread reports of an attempted coup d'etat, preliminary information is sketchy at this time. The situation is clearly dynamic, very fluid. Information is unclear and conflicting. Therefore, we can only monitor. Jamaica has been consistent and clear that we continue to hope for the return of peace, stability, and prosperity to the Venezuelan people, so we continue to monitor very closely. Johnson-Smith told the Observer following yesterday's press statement by Prime Minister Andrew Holness and World Bank Vice President Alex Van Traustenberg at the office of the Prime Minister in St. Andrew. So I'm not even sure if Jamaica is recognizing. Here it says in January, Jamaica sided with 18 other members of the Organization of American States in favor of a resolution not to recognize the legitimacy of Maduro's new term as Venezuela's president. The resolution was passed in Washington minutes after Maduro was sworn in for a second term in Caracas. Last month, Jamaica was forced to explain the reasons behind its vote at the OAS that resulted in the hemispheric body accepting the nomination of a candidate supported by Guaido, who is seeking to replace President Nicolas Maduro as head of state. Johnson-Smith said then that the Holness government supported Guaido's choice in his capacity as president of the National Assembly and not as interim president. So they're treading like a very fine line there. Now, a lot of countries are doing that. But those of you that are saying that there's literally no legitimacy behind the Juan Guaido group, think about this in the long term. Those people that support the Venezuelan government have to remember that the person who brought this movement, the Bolivarian movement, whatever the hell that is, to power, themselves attempted a coup in order to put it into power. And they failed back in 1992 2 times. They tried 2 coups against the Carlos Andrés Pérez government. And that was led by Hugo Chavez. And they failed. And those that think that, well, that was a coup that was for the right reasons, if it was for the right reasons and the previous administration, the previous regime was so evil, then how did they let Chavez live and survive in order to fight another day and end up getting elected president of Venezuela? How did they let that happen? It just doesn't work that way. The idea that socialism is a rebellion against brutal oppression by the capitalist class, that executes and murders its opponents is actually refuted by the example of Venezuela. Now, yes, there were, for example, the 2002 coup that was organized with the CIA's help, the Carmona coup. Yeah, that was a horrible idea. And it's a black mark on the American record in Latin America that they tried to use the CIA in order to overthrow Chavez after he was democratically reelected. That doesn't mean, however, that Chavez and his successor, Maduro, can now preach about, oh, it's an evil coup by the foreigner. The foreigner is trying. No, you and your ilk. You tried to come to power using a coup. You failed. It ended up being that the democratic process brought you into power, and now you're trying to hang on to power through the force of arms, and that's about it. So eventually something is going to have to happen. This government has failed Venezuelans, and it will never be able to put together what it's already broken, because what are you thinking? Are more soldiers going to join the government? Are more people going to volunteer from within Venezuela to help Maduro? Or is he dependent on soldiers from abroad to buttress his rule? That's about it. Please like, share, subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds. Those are both at Chef Leopard, and on Gab.com. That's at Starscream85. And I'll talk to you later.